Yeah, sorry, I don't know where to start.
Welcome
You
to Creative Leaders Unplugged. There's that. And then, but we can start because we just had this really great conversation with Dara Douglas. But one of the things that came up was stories. And
Yeah,
so I was just telling Arne, and then we're like, oh, this would be good. Start, hit the record, hit the record. Um, but with stories, it costs me nothing to listen to your story, right? I don't have to, or it costs me some time, maybe some attention, but I don't. A story is just a story. You can just sit there as a very passive spectator. Just, okay, yeah, that's your story. Nice. And if I don't agree with your story, it's your story. It's not, we're not saying these are facts. It's just a story. Okay, yeah, this was your life experience. Yeah, sure. Okay. But stories also give us that space to reflect or, oh, wait, now I look at you in a totally different light because I've just heard this really interesting story about how you handled something, right? And so I think that's very interesting because stories are very unassuming. Oh, yeah, let me tell you a story. Oh, yeah, sure, whatever. Where, hey, can I change your mind on a topic?
yeah.
That requires a lot more of a buy in. Or, hey, let's debate about this. But if I just share a story, it's very unassuming.
Stories are we underestimate the power of,
Yeah.
of good storytelling
Hmm.
because it and there's all sort of science around this where they can measure basically your brain activity um, while telling a story and listening to stories. And it turns out that if you listen to a story, um, it basically activates the same brain patterns as the storyteller. So your brains literally align. It is sort of something that um, I'm not sure how to call it, mirror cells or what have you. So we learn by copying each other.
Yes.
So if I see you um, do something and I just look at it, I'm not doing it, but you're doing it. You're kind of,
Hmm.
picking up a cup of coffee or something like that, whatever, something, a task. My brain has the same activity as your brain. Sort of it mimics that. So because we learn, we say, oh, that's interesting because maybe I can learn from that and I can copy that if it's a new thing or something. And
Hmm.
so storytelling literally aligns brains if you listen to a good story. And it means that we become part of it. So you know that if you go to a movie that really touches you, it's emotional. You're connected to it. You
Yeah.
respond physically to it, right? It's not it's not a superficial thing. So listening to real stories of real people that does something to you, and it's so if you want to convince anyone about something you believe in, telling a story about you know your experience, your lived experience, something that some kind of transitional moment or something. You that's that people will see you differently. First of all, you will change their minds directly because you just changed the way they look at you
Hmm.
because you
Hmm.
shared something. And yeah, so stories are it's interesting. Storytelling has been very popular for a long time, and then it somehow disappeared as sort of a thing that we teach or a skill that business people want. It's never
Yeah.
really disappeared completely, but it has been less popular, and
Yeah.
it's all of a sudden it's emerging again as a really important skill. And of course, it is when you look at AI and technology, real lived experience, real stories.
Hmm.
That's what separates us from whatever AI, whatever technology, whatever
Yeah.
computers can create. That's lived experience. That's us. That's human, right? That's what separates us. That's what makes us human, and that really connects to us. And so, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also thinking of like the power of self storytelling as well, right? You can have, I don't know, say you have three sequential events happen in a row. That's usually how sequences work.
in a row, yeah,
You have three like unfortunate events happen in a row, right? You're just having a bad day, right? You can tell yourself some story about it. You can tell yourself multiple stories about what it could potentially mean. And based on the story that you tell yourself about those three bad events that happen, it can also change how you view that experience or what you get from it or how you approach it. And that's just for yourself storytelling, right? And we do this a lot subconsciously without fully realizing it. So what is okay, these are the facts, right? Maybe I spilled my coffee and then, I don't know, whatever. But what's the story behind that? And
Yeah, exactly. I think storytelling, I mean, we tell ourselves stories that we can also change the story we tell ourselves, right? So, so when you have, I mean, I've done storytelling exercise a couple of years ago. We did a storytelling workshop, and we had we had people tell stories about things that happened to them that had a lot of impact, and these were not positive stories. So sort of very emotional stories that some of them had never even shared with anyone. And they shared these stories, and we talked about the stories. And actually, by sharing them with a group of people that were not friends or family, just as a workshop, and we realize it's also flexible because it's what you told yourself about what that meant, that story. Because when we talked about what did that story actually teach you and do for you, how did that story shape you as you are now, they went like, oh yeah, that actually had a lot of impact and also positive impact. And so actually that was a pivotal moment, and it was maybe painful, but I would not be here without that experience. So actually, that was a
framed
really
it.
interesting
Yeah.
learning. I learned so much about myself. I actually learned that. So it was one lady. She talked about a painful moment, but she actually, in hindsight, thought she said, "Well, actually, I was quite resilient. I pushed through this. If I think about it now, huh? Yeah, actually, it was painful, but actually, I'm quite proud of that. I kind of went through it, and now I'm here." And so that changed the story for her.
That's
It
fascinating.
changed the
Yeah.
story. So you can change your past, right? It's not a set in stone. It's not a given. It's like this is what happened, and that's what it meant. You know, like no, actually, it meant other things too,
Yeah.
right? So, anyways, yeah, that was sort
Well,
of like, oh, you can
it's really
rewrite.
interesting you mentioned that because something I've been personally doing for the last 7 or 8 years is every day at the end of the day, I write down the best moment of my day and I put it on a little piece of paper and I drop it in a box. So I now have probably over 2,000 data points of it's a little piece of paper with a date written down and the best part of my day. And so I finally wanted to do something with this. So I made a zine, kind of like a collection of some of the small things, but going back through all of those past best moments of my day was really interesting because I had kind of told myself some stories about myself socially, like, oh, I assume this is how people perceive me socially, or oh, I always feel a little bit more like an outsider or a loner. But then going back through all of these things, there were so many best moments of my day that were just really beautiful interactions with friends or acquaintances or colleagues. And somehow my brain has just, I don't know, picked up not the wrong signal, but just interpreted it in a different way. And so even looking back on these things that have happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, it also helped me reframe this story. And I'm now then approaching these more casual encounters or, just somebody you bump into or a colleague, maybe somebody you wouldn't consider a close friend. I'm approaching it in a new way now. And that has been really, really interesting. But even from thinking of the best moments of my days,
Yeah, wow.
it's still helping me reframe things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you create a lens through which you
Exactly.
see things, and that that shapes your reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Great idea.
Yeah. It's
Huh.
really, and you feel really rich when you go through, when you look at all of your past papers, you just feel so. And the thing is, there's always something There's always one best moment in every day. And some days it's just going to bed.
Yeah.
Be honest.
I went to sleep. Yeah. Well, yeah, that could be a good moment. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Cool.
Yeah.
So, what about Dara and
Yes.
the?
So Dara, yeah, she's one of 9 kids. So definitely holds a unique perspective there.
Yeah,
And she, I think it's very interesting. She called herself that she was kind of always the academic one in a family full of creatives.
yeah,
And she has still found herself now leading co-design at a very big and powerful company. And
yeah.
yeah,
And being a creative,
and being a creative.
totally, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed her perspective and her stories and the way she is so clear on where she comes from and what
Hmm.
she takes from, you know, where she comes from to where she is now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, very, very, very inspirational. So I
Yes.
really enjoyed
Yes.
that very much. I actually don't want to talk too much about what we talked about with her because she can do that so much better,
Well said. Well
right? So like,
said.
what can I share? I just really enjoyed the conversation,
Yeah.
and
And I think the biggest thing for me that I take away, and it might not, well, you'll see when you listen to the episode, is that I just need to also have enough courage to put myself out there more as well.
mm,
But also then making that space for others, because I think, yeah.
yeah. I think what I took away is this. I took away many things, but the one thing
Mhm.
was we have to if you need to learn something new, which is sometimes tough,
Mhm.
um, make the process enjoyable, make it fun.
Yes. Yes.
And that is, and then, that sounds like, but it's really difficult because learning something new is hard. And, she talked about her playing piano with her father, wanting to learn to play the piano, which is hard.
Mhm.
Father plays piano. So she learns to play piano with her father, which is actually the most valuable thing of the whole experience is this doing this with her father. So the process is so enjoyable. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the result will be that she can play beautiful piano. So, but that's important too. But the journey, making that
Yeah.
enjoyable, and it's not always easy to come up with ideas to make that enjoyable. And because sometimes we feel like you have to suffer through it or something,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this or story about learning math. You're like, I hate math. Like my kids, like they hate it. But how do you make that more enjoyable?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, so that made me think about my own work and what I do. How do I make these sort of the things we do and we offer and we want, um, you know, the way we want to reach out to people and have them
Mhm.
learn new skills. How do we
Yeah.
make that more fun and more enjoyable?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And also the power of stories, but we were talking about that when we started the intro. So
Yeah. I think probably that's part of making it more enjoyable.
yeah,
Stories.
definitely.
It's a story. So design it as a story.
Tell me I have a learning workshop that I have to attend. And I'm like, oh, okay. But tell me I'm just going to go listen to a bunch of stories and it's much more enjoyable.
Yeah. 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 And listening to your story too. So you're like, I have to tell a story. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. How do we tie that into maths?
I got lots of stories about math.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Anyway, okay. So those were my main takeaways. But again, there was
So many.
so many things that were said that I so enjoyed, and she's very good at explaining these things and talking
Really.
about this herself. So yeah, should we listen to the podcast?
Yes, we should.
I am a wife and I am a sister and a daughter. Um, as a sister, I am a middle child and I have a big family. So for me, I'm all about bringing people together and often solving conflicts. And that tends to be my role. I'm the mediator in the family. I am, as a person, super interested in other people, semi-extrovert. I like to recharge internally and sometimes have time to myself, but I get my energy from being around people. I love understanding how humans click. And I really enjoy actually when someone has a certain view and then you see their view change. I find that really interesting about humans. And I like people coming together from polar opposite views too, and seeing how they can hold space for each other and difference and embrace that, but also maybe leave with different views still, but just having had that space for each other. So there's definitely a big part of me which is about like the dynamics of groups and how they work. Coming from a very big family, I have a big thing about giving voice to people who are underrepresented. So I often look for the kind of where's the voice that we're not hearing in the conversation, either in a professional environment or in terms of the work that I do around diversity and equity and inclusion. Um, and yeah, like I like food a lot, not cooking but eating, and I like being around people. I like dancing actually, and music is like life, and could just do so many great things for your energy and mood. So yeah, that's who I am as a person.
Oh, oh my God, I'm so jealous. Like, what do I do?
Painted
Oh
a
my.
rich, beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, oh, okay.
it works.
Well, that's awesome. Just one thing that kind of jumped out at me. That's the somehow the big family.
Mm.
That's
Mhm.
that's important then, right? Because in you said you resolve conflicts and opposing opinions, and every time you say I see you in the family, is that
Mm.
something that is do you see that connection as well, sort of for what you do now and sort of that big family that you
Yeah.
come from?
A huge amount. So, like my day job, a huge part of that is I lead our co-design lab at PwC, and a lot of that we describe as corporate therapy. It's bringing C-suites together, and often sometimes people across their organization to drive alignment, to accelerate decision making, and to kind of build ownership. And in doing those things, you need to be able to not just like get people together in a way of building consensus where they all nod along, but actually truly understand what are the things underneath and pull those out and be able to kind of grapple with the elements of conflict or indecision that might be happening and understand why it's happening. So I feel like my role as a facilitator uses a lot of that skill of managing the dynamics of being from a big family as well.
Yeah, I could really imagine. And when you say big family, what are we talking? Like
We're talking about. So I have 8 siblings in total,
big
and
family?
they all have lots of children. So lots of nieces and nephews. I don't have any kids of my own, probably because of being scarred. And so, yeah, there's lots of people.
Okay, so you're one of nine, eight
Yeah.
siblings, you're one of nine. So that's certainly a big, and you said you're in the middle. So
Yes, I
that's
am.
okay. A very yeah,
Yeah, that
definitely
does
you're in the
something.
middle of everything.
But that
Hmm.
does something to you, right? So,
Hmm.
because I just relate, for me, it relates to my parents-in-law. So my father-in-law came from a family of 11,
Hmm.
and so these big family, and it makes family. So I'm not sure if because I come from a small. I mean, I just have one sister, so
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that makes a huge difference in how important family is to you. But I think it does in a way because there are so many characters, so many people, so many. It's
Hmm.
such an interesting dynamic, I guess. Is there something specific that you go like, this is what I've learned because of
Yeah.
that. This is what I took away. I can directly I can pinpoint the things that I learned from being in a big family that are something that are,
Yeah,
that are
there's
so
probably
important.
so many things I could talk about that for the whole thing, really. But the thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is perspective. And recently we've had loads of stuff going on in my family, and we've quite a few of us have had individual therapy. And I've been kind of trying to get my mind around that because we each speak to our therapists and share our personal views of the world, and then they tell us things that we can do about ourselves. And I keep saying what we need family therapy because we're still missing each other's perspective. And I guess that's like a big thing that I take away into my work and into creativity. A lot of it is around like how can you take yourself outside of your own perspective, whether that's through people or through things that help you to see the world differently and then challenge your current framing. And that's not something that everybody likes to do. Some people like their perspective and they like their assumptions and they're happy to stay with them. But for me, in terms of like how you work in a system, I think it's being able to shift perspective a lot. That's something that I've been thinking about recently.
Yeah, I did, so it's something I do every now and then is constellations. Actually, with
Mm.
Morgan, this is how I met you. When we did these constellations, we did an experiment. Basically, this is from family therapy, right? So you
Yeah.
basically put yourself in a space, in the position that you feel kind of comfortable and also relates to other people. And so either you're really far away from someone or close to someone. And that was very confrontational, by the way,
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very scary, especially family. But I don't know, it's interesting, but with colleagues too, with when you do that
mm.
with your team, because you can't, your body can't lie.
Yeah.
So you can talk a lot. People can go like, yeah, no, it's not that bad. It's okay. I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. But then your physique, your body, you can't
Mm.
lie. You can't go like, yeah, I'm really close to you.
Yeah,
Because
it's
you're
not
when
so
you're
good.
not, that you're clearly not. That's uncomfortable. So you'll move
You
away.
guys
You're like, I'm
on your
sorry.
face. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Morgan with when we did that at the school.
Mhm.
Where we met, there was one lady. She really so people were in a group and a bit confused because it was an experiment for everyone. But one lady, she really walked away. She was somewhere down the hallway or somewhere. I didn't know what happened, but
Yeah.
because you just can't lie, and she was like, I
Mm.
feel totally disconnected from this, and
Mm.
so interesting how that family
Mm.
and where I'm going really is this connection between family and colleagues and team and company. Because I
Yeah.
just read this article about someone and it was I don't know, it was a thing on LinkedIn, I guess. And a lot of people agreed with this. And I was kind of a little bit puzzled by, and it was, they said, this idea of talking about your colleagues as family,
Oh yeah.
the people, that's not family. These
Mm.
are not, it's completely different. It's not family. And I thought, yeah, it's true. But in a way, is it? Because family is also, you don't choose your family. You don't choose your colleagues quite often either. There is
Mm.
something about this. You're stuck together. You're going to be very different people. Um, and you need to kind of do something together and create
Mm.
something together because you're kind of, your family or colleagues. So how do you feel about that? Because it's
Yeah, I saw a
puzzle for me.
similar post and I was also trying to get my head around how do I feel? Because I really love my team. Like I think I've got a real great culture in our team where people are open and vulnerable and we know probably quite a lot about each other's personal lives
Yeah.
and struggles. And part of that understanding where people have come from, I think allows us to approach our work
Mhm.
um yeah, with so much power and understanding and empathy. But I also do think that boundaries in the workplace are important and kind of um, knowing that ultimately this is an employer and I'm an employee
Mm.
and they don't have the same attachment to me as my actual family and I could be gone any day. I think that is an important thing too. So I think it's yeah, it was kind of like in my mind as I don't know how I feel about it, but I think maybe what I was taking away from that post was this sort of toxic narrative of we're a family and we're all in it together and like trying to use that as a way to take you away from your actual family and things like that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's kind of what I took from it. So I
Yeah.
think it's in balance. It's in balance. I definitely think there's so much value in having human connections in the workplace and not seeing it as a transaction.
Yeah.
And the more that you can do that, then you can bring out more from your teams and from the clients that you work with. And so
Yeah,
bringing
families
that
can be
humanity is
toxic.
important. Yeah,
families can be toxic. It's not
true.
like, oh, your family. If you can come from you can come from a broken family, and then the company is actually way better family for you because you
That
feel
is true.
way safer than. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like one or the other. It's not like
Yeah, that is true.
it's people have relationships, and another thing, um, maybe this is something, at least the way I have experienced it, is that if you are in a creative team, so
Mm,
I come from a background of agencies, creative agencies, design
mm,
teams. They are sometimes there's a, I don't know if this is true, but I felt that there's more vulnerability needed to be creative, and
Yeah.
so you are becoming there's more. I don't know. I have always had this family feeling with the teams I work with when there were designers and creatives, because they were vulnerable, that they had
yeah.
to show their sketches, and they're so
Mhm.
personal, and so maybe is there connection to
Yeah,
with
I think
that?
so too. And that's like, you talk about the psychological safety point, isn't it? So we we want to feel that we can come as we are, be who we are, and bring our ideas. And so when you're creating that, that's how you feel at home, right? Like you can be who you are. You don't have to dress up or pretend like to put on a persona. And so the more you can have that level of like authenticity and openness and vulnerability, I think that brings the best ideas. So how you create space for that as a leader, where people can show up authentically and challenge staff and call things out, and also throw something in they're not quite sure of or they haven't quite perfected yet. I think that kind of comes back to the whole point around safety.
True.
Yeah. And I'm thinking because you mentioned that you lead the, is it the co-creation lab?
For a design lab, yeah, but
Design lab.
similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So you lead the co-design lab, and I think you're in the UK. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So also it's a bit more of a hierarchical country a bit compared, I
Mhm.
mean, at least compared to the Netherlands, which is very flat. And you mentioned that being in the co-design lab is oftentimes like corporate therapy.
Mhm.
So how do you, because if a bunch of people were to come in and say, okay, we're going to work on this campaign or this idea, you can't immediately start there, I imagine. So then what is your approach to, yeah, bringing all of these people into a place where
Yeah.
they feel comfortable working? Yeah.
Um, So it's interesting because what we do typically, so people often see our work show up as a workshop. That's like the most visible element of it. But I guess anyone who builds workshops knows that all the work is actually happening in the preparation for. And so we do something called a sponsor process, which is an opportunity for us to start to understand the system that that client's operating in, and take the different perspectives within the organization, maybe 4 to 6 people, and start to understand like the trickiness about their problem. So usually problems surface in a very rational way. They're trying to create a new operator model. They want to implement a new system, but we try to use that sponsor group to unpeel the complexity from a emotional and a rational perspective as well, and see how we can get a better understanding of what is preventing them or what's making it tricky. And so the more we have that understanding, that helps us then to design what the workshop or the design forum will do, and the human elements of it as well that we need to take people on a sort of emotional journey around. So it kind of often starts off from a very rational place, and people also may think that they're joining from that perspective too, but we're always designing for the human experience and the sort of journey we want people to go on as well.
Yeah, really cool. And when you think back to then like your childhood or your life growing up, are there any moments or stories that you can think back and you're like, of course I end up in this job. I was already doing this when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. What would I give you? Um, It's funny because yeah, like I said about being the family mediator, I feel like that brings that skill set to life in lots of ways. Because listening is just like it's so funny. My family we had a barbecue recently, and one of my aunts said, "Oh, I seeing all the stuff of you on LinkedIn is so amazing because you've always been quiet growing up." And I was like in my head thinking, I've actually never been quiet, but you guys are just really loud. So it's quite funny. And
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, so in that respect, I spend a lot of time listening and really trying to
Mm.
understand like where people are coming from when they say something, not just what they said, but what they meant by it. So I think that is a huge skill in the work that I do right now. It's not so much about having the answer, but actually being able to draw it out from people, making them feel heard. So I can definitely see things that have happened in my childhood and stuff that play up now. The other thing that's interesting too is coming from a um being a diaspora. So my dad is from Jamaica, my mum is from St. Lucia. They both came to the UK when they were like 9, 10 years old. So
Wow.
all my siblings were all born in the UK, but I do still think that brings an interesting dynamic. So, like grappling with things like identity and
Hmm.
connection and belonging. I definitely think that's draws me to this type of work because it's giving a platform or a process that allows all voices to be heard. So when I said before that that's a big driver for me, I think that also comes from just like lived experience and being from immigrant parents and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting because we, the most people we talk to in this program, because we're talking to a lot of creatives and
Mm.
creative thinkers, and uh, most of them, I think, I mean, I haven't really made the kind of, I didn't really add it up all in my head, but most of the people we talk to are introverts,
Mm.
and I think so, right, Morgan? I think most of them are like, I'm a
Yeah.
kind of an introvert. Yeah, a
A
lot of
large
them,
part are introverts. Yeah.
they might have ADHD or some kind of some kind of label, and because of the creatives. But what it actually comes down to is not so much the label they get or whatever. It's more that they are, all of them are a little bit of a how to say it, a misfit in a way.
Mm.
They're kind of, they're in a world that they don't feel that they really belong into, but that
Mm.
actually gives them this other way of looking at things, which is so helpful
Yeah.
for the organizations they work for because they have this other point of view. So
Yes.
so in a way, I think I'm hearing that as well with you, right? So although
Mhm.
you are an extrovert, which doesn't fit the program,
Yeah.
you know,
Apologies. Yeah.
you're like, what is that? What do you
Yeah.
Showing
do?
off our data collection here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we were on a roll here. Like it's
The
all under.
outliers. These are the most interesting parts, though, Arna.
Yeah,
This
now
is
there's an outlier of all the outliers, which is
But I
confusing.
do really agree about the Misfits point. There's a song I was listening to the other day, and I was like, "This is so." It's called like "Find Me Where the Wild Things Are," and the whole lyrics is about like just not being from here, but I'm okay. I'm gonna play my drum and make my own beat type thing.
Yeah.
And I feel that so much as an identity of the team that we work in, where lots of people have been sort of slightly misfit within the overall PwC organization, and they've like gravitated to each other around this type of work. But overall, that kind of from what I talked about in terms of being from a migrant piece, I think it brings something where you always sort of enter a space assuming that you'll be the minority voice.
Mm.
And so I think that kind of brings some different skills in there, like yeah, like your ability to adapt and evolve, and definitely resilience to kind of whether your voice is heard or not, and also your ability to kind of move from different spaces. So those types of things I think add to the creative narrative for myself personally. And it's interesting because your question, Morgan, about my childhood, I actually was very like maths focused as a young student and did economics as a degree and then joined PwC. Like it was very linear and it was very kind of organized and logical in terms of my thinking. And I
Mhm.
would never have described myself as a creative. And my family are lots of musicians and artists and tailors. And I was always the academic one, and academic meant mathematical. And
Mhm.
so I think even in that I almost assumed that I didn't have the capability to be creative. It was just not something that I got the gene for. And it was only over time as I started to be exposed to lots of people who had worked in agencies and a different creative process that I realized, oh, actually, this isn't a thing that certain people have this gene for or not. It's something that can be learned and trained. And I very much push that anybody can be a creative. But yeah, it's got a certain label or
Yeah.
expectation around what it means. So I think
Mm.
that's also interesting.
But I still think there's a, maybe it's not in you, maybe it's not a gene, maybe it's not in your DNA, maybe it's not passed on that way. Or maybe it is, because I'm not really sure, because somehow I think it is, but maybe it's not. But it
Mm.
is sort of examples you have. You
Mm.
have examples of people who are creatives and
True.
live their lives that way. So you have those options. And if you
Mm.
grow up without having those options, I think it's more difficult. So
Yeah.
True.
seeing family who are creatives and doing other things, you have those options as well.
Yeah.
But I do think somehow, and it's also because of my kids, because I have two kids, and so my daughter is almost 19, and my son is 13, and so my wife is a designer. I'm a designer, and but my kids are not. They're doing anything creative. So we were like, "What's happening?" My son is totally into football, and he played drums for a little bit, but got totally disinterested. And my daughter, she's like, nah, she doesn't do anything really. She doesn't draw. I was always drawing, and I was doing these things, and so did my wife. And but now all of a sudden, my daughter's 19, and all of a sudden there's little things happening. She goes like, maybe I want to go into fashion. And by the way, there's this art and economics study. Maybe I'll do that. We're like, art and economics? We're like, oh, we're like, hey, something's happening. And she started drawing. And
Oh,
we're doing
interesting.
this drawing challenge now. With my company, and she also started participating,
Oh,
and she's
cool.
she's actually really good. And we're like, you're drawing, and you're like, wow. So I don't know. So I don't know if
Oh, I
it's true.
love it.
I'm hoping there is something,
That you passed on your gene.
right there. Yeah, but there can be also something, and I think this it wasn't so they might tell me this later when they're a
Mm.
little older, and they go like, you were terrible, Dad, that moment. Which you're like, what did I do wrong? But there's this moment. So a friend of mine, he told the story that he was a musician, and he had instruments everywhere,
Mm.
all kinds of instruments everywhere. But his daughter never played music. And
Mm.
later, when she was in her 20s, she said, "You should have pushed me more." And he was like,
Mm.
"I left these things for you to pick up. Like there were guitars, there's a piano, there was a trumpet, there was saxophones. He had this stuff everywhere. Hoping she would just pick it up instead of forcing her. And but she was like, "Yeah, but it was always yours. You were
Mm.
doing that all the time. So you took that space." And sometimes I'm a bit afraid that I kind of do that too.
Mm.
So they occupy those spaces, and you have to find your own space. So in a
Mm.
way, I think you kind of, you're creative, but you have to find your own
Yeah.
space that is yours.
I like that. And I think also something I took from what you're saying as well, it's like how can the environment expose you to something? So it may not be a natural tendency, but just being exposed to something
Yeah.
creative, I think that is a really interesting point. And yeah, I think I did find my own path because although the work I do is creative, it's always still linked with business outcomes. And I think the importance of
Mhm.
bringing those two things together sort of drives how I view what I bring to the world. And so, like your daughter about art and economics, that would be a great thing for me to go study. Like I would really
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah, 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 yeah.
it.
Me too,
So I
by the way.
think the
We're like,
blending
oh,
of like or juxtaposition, if I can say that,
yeah, yeah,
of things that feel slightly conflicting, I is awesome. Loads of creativity comes from that too.
yeah. But you do now. So what you do is you show other people also options. That's
Mm,
what you do now. You go
mm,
like, hey, here are the options,
mm,
and you go like, oh, this is possible too. So that's a creative space where
mm.
you show people these options that they might not have considered, right?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's very true. Um, yeah, it's lots
Yeah.
to bring from that. It's cool.
Oh, you're like, do I? Oh, sorry. I was
That's good.
like, yes,
And
that's
I
what
was
you do.
Thank
thinking,
you.
and I was thinking, of course, Arne, you shared the story about your daughter, and then Dara, you said you grew up in this family of creatives, but you always viewed yourself as academic.
Mm,
And I've heard that because I also believe that everyone can be creative,
mm,
and has the capacity to be a great creative. But it's a bit of a muscle,
mm,
either train or that we don't. And I think, Arne, we've talked to a lot of people whose brains work differently, right? So we're just kind of have to do things in a creative way because the normal way doesn't work for us. Also, people, Dara, who are maybe outside traditional systems or stuff, they have to find new ways of approaching things or interacting with people or handling themselves in a room. And yeah, so I think it's a muscle. And even if we don't realize we're actively doing it, I think if we're in these environments where it is around, our way of seeing how other people work
Yeah.
is then already being trained. And I think
Yeah.
then it's kind of
I think that is
inevitable that
it.
at some point it'll make itself apparent. And yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And even your story, Morgan, as well, from finance into product design, like
Mhm.
that's super interesting. And I feel like it is about understanding different ways of doing something. So coming from a sort of more process and mathematical background, I assumed problem solving was linear. And there's always an answer that comes from it. And then you put
Yes.
humans into the mix of it, and actually it's not. It's like crazy and chaotic and anything could happen. So realizing that then exposed me to different ways in which you might go about problem solving, which are not linear, which are circular or divergent and convergent, etc. So
Yeah.
being open to different possibilities, and that just being a reminder that your way of doing things isn't the only way, I think is quite a fundamental of creativity. So the
Yeah.
opportunity to move discipline, I think, helps a huge amount, and then take pieces from different disciplines and be able to amalgamate them into something new that resonates for you or for others, is important too.
Yeah. It's
That
a really
takes
powerful
courage,
skill.
It
right?
does, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, because I think a lot of people are, that's really outside of their comfort zone.
Mm,
And it depends a little bit, again, it depends again on the space you're in. Are you in this safe space or brave space?
mm,
Are you able to kind of explore a new way of working or thinking? And is that okay?
mm,
So it's really interesting how, you know, obviously we try to kind of, move through this life, this world, in a safe way as
Yeah.
possible, because we have responsibilities, we have our mortgages, or we have our family, we have to have food, stuff like that. So and then so maybe the connection to family and business is there. It goes a little bit, it takes a different turn where you go like, yeah, but when you're working, to your earlier point, you're an employee, you can just and this is happening right now to a lot of people. You can just
Mhm.
lose your job because there's a
Mhm.
crisis, right? And it can just happen. And then all of a sudden, you had a family, but yeah, here's your box.
Mhm.
Go 50. No, this is in the US, obviously. Yeah, you go,
mm,
yeah, 50 minutes to get out of the door.
yeah.
And here's some security guards to help you. So, which is
Yeah.
like, but we were family.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
it's like, yeah, not
Yeah.
now.
But
Right.
that's the
So,
reality check, isn't it? And then when you said about it takes courage, I think it absolutely does. But then I think it's being more and more required now,
Yeah.
because if you are
is it?
losing your job and it's just like the trends and the structures are shifting so quickly, um, where you may have built a 20-year career in a
Mhm,
certain discipline,
mhm.
that may not be the viable option going forward.
Yeah.
So the more ability that we have or we build in people to move and to learn and to kind of experience things outside of what they know, I think that's like key for our, let's say, career survival.
So it's
Um,
continuous learning and
mm,
and and upskilling, and this is also when I look at my kids. So my daughter, right, she's looking
mm,
for something to study, and
mm,
but so she does think like, this is, I need to choose, and
mm,
it has to be the thing I'm going to be doing later. And I
mm.
keep telling her, no, 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 this is just the first thing you're going to study.
Yeah,
You're going to
Yeah.
do other things, because this is not
yeah,
going to end, because what you might, when you finish this school, the world has shifted again
yeah,
and changed
yeah,
again,
Yeah.
definitely.
right? And so is it something that, if you look at education and from actually from when you're a child up to when you're an adult,
Mm,
I mean, this needs to change as well, the way we learn, right? The way we
Yeah.
are educated.
Yeah, for sure.
And
And trying to get the balance of like the content versus the way of thinking. So, like the current curriculum or education system is very much focused on the content that you need to learn, and you
yeah,
learn that content and you complete an exam, and that like verifies whether you're any good at that content. But it's not really testing your way of thinking.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that's interesting to explore. So, how do you build more curiosity or experimentation or agility or like those kind of things within content? The content could be whatever. Like as you say, pick any subject, doesn't really matter, just one that you love. And that might be no longer necessary in 3 years' time, but you know, at least you enjoyed it at the time. But more interestingly is the way of thinking. So I was listening to a talk recently about like what the future of education should be from one of the founders of Google DeepMind, and he was saying, actually, I'd still encourage my kids to do STEM subjects, and I think learning maths is a great thing to do. And I hear so many people say, "Oh, why did I learn Pythagoras theorem?" or "Why do I have to learn algebra?" It's not actually about the thing; it's more about what you learnt about problem solving through that. And so I think there's something
Exactly.
in the education system of like helping people understand the what is it? The mindset or the frame, not just the content inside it.
Oh
Which I
yeah,
yeah,
think
this is so. I mean, oh my God, this is such a big thing. This is such a big topic, and because exactly so, which is such a good. I mean, why do we learn math? Why do we
mm,
learn anything really?
yeah,
Um, when it's hard and
yeah,
you're not really sure how to if you're going to use it.
yeah.
It is. I so believe that. So I mean, so I have dyslexia. I hated math, but it is math is a way of thinking. It helps you. It's also you know, my son now, he gets French at
Mm,
school, and although he likes it very much, but it's tough because it's a very
yeah.
different language compared to Dutch.
Mm,
The grammar is totally different. It's quite a tough language to
mm,
learn, and uh, and it's really not about him being fluent in French, but it teaches him a completely new way of structuring a language, and it helps you think differently. It's about the mindset. It opens up this, you know, it really creates these new neural connections and
yeah,
options again. Like, oh, it can be completely different. It's like traveling. If you travel to another country, you know, live in another country in a different culture for a while, it
mm,
changes the way you look at the world, right? So it's this growth that is happening. While, and it's not about becoming, mathematicians or what
mm,
have you. But I want to ask you, sort of, getting to this question, um, if so, if you want to, because there was a post I read and I was thinking about this. Um, if you need to learn a new skill,
mm,
say creative thinking, which
mm,
is an important skill for the future. Being
mm,
creative, be creative is about adaptability, is about problem solving. Okay, but you have AI
mm,
that makes it so easy on the surface to
mm,
be a creative thinker because it gives you all the answers, and it sounds all great and it's so
mm,
nice and it's easy, and your brain is lazy because it takes up all this energy. So if you can cut corners, you'll cut corners, which means you will not learn the skill because the
mm.
skill is hard work. It
Yeah,
is hard work. It's the struggle which is actually creating that and building that skill. But
yeah,
then, although we know you need that skill for the future, but AI is actually making it too easy for you. So you're not training that muscle.
yeah,
That, to me, that was talk about, paradoxes and
yeah,
juxtaposition, things that are like, oh, wait a minute, so
yeah,
we know we
yeah,
need it, and AI cannot be our, they cannot replace our creativity or human creativity because it's a different thing. But it might actually make us, less critical thinkers and less creative thinkers in the end.
yeah. I think that's the key, right? Like working out why are we learning the thing in the first place? What skill is it trying to build? Because when you were talking about it, I was thinking going through the schooling system, my mindset was like pick the ones that are easiest, pick the ones that you'll do well in and get an A star. Like that's the goal.
Mhm.
And I loved history, but I wouldn't pick it because I wasn't good at it. But it's actually the skill it gives you in terms of being able to analyze and to critique and challenge a bias or understand if something is a true source or not is super important now in a world of AI where there's just so much content. But most people probably wouldn't think about history now as a great thing to learn because the content is all over the internet and you can get it in 2 seconds.
Exactly.
So trying
Yeah.
to get the skill that we gain from it, I think is really interesting. And you can apply it to our work too in terms of like things like design thinking and agile working and all of those. There's so many methodologies, and people will typically start to understand the method and the tools that exist, but being able to quickly get to the skills it's building and the mindset it's creating is like when it actually becomes magical, and then you can apply it in every context and it becomes like a, as you say, a muscle. It's like an intuition that you have rather than a set of steps you're going through. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the shift that needs to happen
Yeah.
when we
But
think
how do we
about
do that?
learning.
How do we make people do the work while,
Mm,
right? So there's the answer's right here for you, but we're going to make you do all that work
Go
to
your
get
work.
to that
mm.
answer. When actually you can just ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, but I think it's such a fun, it's a deeper fundamental thing about like we said about this fake concept of time.
Yeah.
Like we could go back there because everything is fast at the moment, and everything is like the faster answer is the better one to go for. But if we were able to, and we had the luxury of time, even though we just impose random things on ourselves that tell us we don't, then the time to do the work, we could make that a more enjoyable thing. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Learning to play piano, I find it really painful. My family's all great musicians and I want to be good like them, but I'm not. But the time of playing piano with my dad is great time because I'm not just learning piano, I'm bonding with him.
Yeah.
And so how we make the experience of learning an enjoyable thing, that is time we choose to slow down and build a craft because
Oh, that's
that's
interesting.
just something we want to do, not necessarily for the result or the
Yeah.
box tick at the end when you've passed an exam. I think that time thing is so hard, and the fact that we measure everything, like so many results are based on how much time it takes,
Yeah.
rather than like with creativity, it's not like that at all. Sometimes it takes ages to get to
Yeah.
something really, really good. So the faster outcome is never just the quickest one.
Yeah. But technology
Mhm.
is all about efficiency
Speed.
and
Yeah.
speed and faster because they keep telling us like there's a new, whatever ChatGPT, whatever. Then I get confused with the names of ChatGPT. There's so many ChatGPTs. I don't know what they all
But
do, but they're faster. This one is much faster. You go like faster? What do you
Faster
mean
than what?
faster?
Yeah.
Like it's what used to take 3 seconds to explain, quantum physics to me, and now it takes 1 second to explain quantum physics to me. Where
yeah.
like, really, why? Who
And I think
cares?
and I think I'm thinking this might be a very silly statement once I actually reflect on it, but I think a lot of modern technology is maybe not initially built, but then always in the end modified to serve capitalism, right? Which is always about gains and growth and getting
Yeah,
bigger and more dominant or powerful. And of course, there's
and
amazing
less people,
examples. What'd you say?
less people to have as
Of course,
workers in the
yeah,
workforce. Yeah,
reliabilities.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
But so I think um, it's very interesting then. I always love examples of when people can then take, because you also talked about the make the act of learning an enjoyable experience. And to be quite honest, unfortunately, I don't think I've ever thought like I've as a teacher, I've tried to make my classes enjoyable for the students, but I've never thought about it on a much larger scale. Like, how can I make their entire act of learning this semester an enjoyable experience? It's more, okay, how can I make this workshop more enjoyable? Or how can I make this project, but not the overall, like, what is it that learning needs? And because, right, in capitalism, and also a lot of things, not just capitalism, but is so outcome focused, where when you're with your dad learning piano, that's process focused. And sure, there's nice outcome, but that's you're
I'm not
emphasizing.
sure if the outcome is any good, actually.
You You are bonding with your dad, so
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I think that is it. It's hard. I think the system's just not set up for what we need now. So yeah, everything being measured in a certain way and productivity being the main driver or efficiency being the main driver kind of gets to the heart of why some of these things are so difficult.
yeah,
But I like my hope is that we can use these technologies to remove so much of the things that are not value adding or enjoyable for us so that we can have more space for, yeah, learning, mastery, caring, connecting,
yeah,
empathizing, the things that only humans can truly experience. And I think that's a great opportunity for people who have a creative mindset because it just shows how much more and more that skill set becomes useful. I don't think that AI, like it can come up with loads of ideas, sure, but I don't think it can meet the level of human creativity. So the more we build that, I still think we're differentiated, I
yeah,
think. I
yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I definitely agree. And I read a really interesting article yesterday about how AI is taking away our design decisions. So there was some filmmakers, they were talking about how they see these young filmmakers will make a storyboard in AI. And so the young filmmakers are just thinking about the higher level story, but they're not thinking about the small details. So then they'll
Mm,
present the storyboard and it'll have a nice high level story, but the smaller details, they're not able to explain why they made the choices that they made because they're giving that power to AI. And it's those
mm,
small choices as well along the way that really make the difference between, yeah, something that really brings us to life. And
I think we're just at the start of that. I mean, with every new technology, there's this moment of, nowadays everyone has a camera. My first job was a photographer, and this is like, what was that? Oh my God. I'll say the early 90s somewhere. My first little job, I was a photographer, and I had to develop the film, and all that.
Mhm.
And now the camera I had then, and compared to the camera I have here on my phone, was a terrible camera. This camera on my phone is way better. I mean, it's amazing technology I have here. Everyone has a better camera than I had when I worked as a photographer. Um, are we all amazing photographers? No, we're not. There's, not, no. My camera, the camera I'm using now for photography, it has AI built into it. It detects animals or your eye, whatever I wanted to. I just say make a picture of cars, and it just it detects cars. It's crazy, right? So it takes away a lot of the I know things that just kind of the mistakes that you can make or the accidents, the happy accidents, basically that
Hmm.
you can create, right? Which is actually where most innovation and new ideas come from, by happy accidents. Like, oh, we made a mistake. That's our creative ability as humans is making mistakes and recognizing them as serendipity and saying, actually, it is actually quite a nice. So, and so the most creative thing AI does is the hallucinations, actually.
Yeah.
That's the most creative thing it does. Everything else is boring,
Mm.
right? And so I don't know. I think there's these are tools. These are, but
Mm.
we just have to discover
Yeah.
them, and there will be people coming to the service who do amazing things with it. I've seen little films made by people with AI that I was like, wow. That's amazing, right? But
Yeah.
like animation, I mean, most feature films use green screens and computer tech and whatever. It's all fake anyway, right?
Mhm.
But I think so, what I think is going to happen is that lived experience, real
Mm,
stories are going to be
mm,
more important, because if you have a story with, feature film with fake actors, it's all AI, it's going to happen, right? So it's all fake, it's all because it's cheap, and there's two people making a lot of money instead of 100 people making a lot of money. So,
mm,
so we choose that. I don't know why, but that's what we want. Make a lot of money. So two people make this amazing movie using AI with a few prompts, and it's emotional because we like, we put him, that's what we do. Kind of, even people put sort of human kind of emotions onto a robot vacuum cleaner. They give it a name, and we do that. We're silly, so we get emotional because of this film, right? But it's fake. But then you have a documentary about a real person with real lived
Mm.
experience that
Mm.
really reaches us, that touches us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's not so that's going to be a bigger difference more and more. Like, we want to
Mm.
have real people. I want to see real people. I go to the theater to see real people, and they
Mhm.
might make a mistake, which is okay because it's real. And that's going to be more valuable, I think.
Mm.
That's my point.
Yeah, I
There. So
agree.
there.
And like something about I really like happy accidents, and something about the imperfection and the failure is what makes us human
Yes.
is nice.
Yes.
I like that, and makes it feel more authentic and more real.
Yeah.
And we don't want a whole bunch of polished content that's like
No,
generic,
it's boring.
and there's going to be almost overwhelming abundance of that too.
Yes.
So then we'll be looking for the
Yes.
thing that is actually different, that is unique, and that just comes from experience. I agree.
Yeah, because everything else is kitsch, right? With the
Mm.
first a painting AI makes, you go like, "Whoa, that's amazing." The second one, you go like, "Yeah." The third
Yeah,
one, you go like, "I don't know." It's never going to be Van Gogh, who
yeah,
is,
yeah.
who kind of had problems and wrote
Mm.
letters to his brother, died poor. The
Mm.
story, the real story, if that all is fake,
Yeah,
who cares?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
AI is made out of dead stuff, and
yeah.
it doesn't have a life. It doesn't have a mother. It doesn't have friends. It doesn't have any, it doesn't have ADHD. It doesn't have all those things,
Mm.
right? It doesn't have a story. It's
Mm.
not, it's boring. It's not interesting. In the end, it's about people and connecting. And I think
Yeah.
authenticity and realness,
Yeah,
I think that's where you're going to see as a business too,
yeah,
right? Who do you trust? Who do you relate to? What do you want to be part of?
yeah,
I think that's yeah. Sorry, what
yeah.
do you think there? Sorry.
No, I really agree. I'm just nodding
Yeah,
everything
I
you're
know, but the
saying.
people can't hear you. Yes, he's nodding.
Strong yes.
Sorry. This is it's so top of mind, all these things nowadays.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
I think we're all kind of going to agree around it because we're from that kind of creative space.
Mhm.
But I just hope, I guess my hope is that people start to shift the conversation. Like the conversations on AI are so much focused on productivity and efficiency, but how can it unleash that opportunity and space for us? Like more time for creativity, more time for connection, understanding each other, empathy, like those types of things, because then I think we start to change the game rather than just stay in the same game trying to make it more fast. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a quote like, I want AI to do my dishes, not write the poems.
Yeah.
Could you? I mean, really, like poems written by AI? First of all, I've tried all of this, right? So I did all of this, and I play music, and I write some music, and I thought, what can it write lyrics? And it can, but they're awful.
Yeah.
They're awful.
Lyric stuff,
They're
yeah.
awful. But the whole YouTube is I saw this article that YouTube is swamped by AI
Yeah.
music. And now they're
Oh.
putting labels on it. This is not AI going because it's horrible. It
Yeah.
is
Mm.
horrible. All right. So again, it doesn't mean that, I mean, there's been horrible music forever and ever and ever that was just produced to make money. Fine. Okay. And it will be successful, et cetera, et cetera. But I also with music, also with that, you'll see that the people that are authentic,
Yeah.
write music from their heart, do some,
Yeah.
and push the boundaries and try things and experiment and are real. They're going to kind of float to the surface. They're going to be the people and the communities and the companies that we are going to kind of love,
Yeah.
right? And that's, but that takes bravery. That takes a
Mhm.
brave sort of attitude to saying, okay, this is efficient, this is fast, this is quick,
Mm.
but actually time. So we just think
Mm.
this is slower, this is more real, this is about
Mm.
community. Um, but
But
that's
I
what
guess that when I just think about the music industry and the arts, like that tension between faster and commercial and mass market and like real and authentic and lived probably has always existed, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's probably most artists' challenge. Like, which way do I go, and how much do I follow my craft and my passion versus appeal to the masses and make loads of money? And so it's like it's an existing truth that an artist has to make a choice around.
Mhm.
And I think that the ones that we love and live for long periods, in minds of people, are the ones that focus on that rather than make a one hit wonder and it's like, woo, yeah, and then it's gone. So I think that is, yeah, the ask of people. It's like continuing to still build the things that you love and invest in your skills, because that's where we get the most of ourselves, rather than seeking first the money and the finance, because then you go to diluting. I imagine that is already a challenge that most artists have. And the other thing that was in my head as you were speaking to on is this overwhelming abundance of content that is just too much. Like with AI, how easy it is to have, like you said, so many songs on YouTube that are not actually made by anyone real, poems, posts, social media, like all of these things we're just overwhelmed and inundated with. And I personally, and I think that society will need to create like some distance and space for our mental health and for our creativity and for our ability to
Mhm.
even think from all of that content that's out there. And the idea that everyone grabs AI and makes their thing go viral because they've AI'd it just doesn't have any meaning. It's like we can't all go viral. Every content can't be distinct,
Let's
right?
all
So
go viral. Yeah,
yeah.
it's like
So
everything's viral now.
Anymore
yeah,
now.
now what? Now what?
Yeah, no, what? So, yeah, we
And
made
so
it. Everyone's viral now. Yay. It's like, okay.
so maybe all of those things just become less important to us, right? Like what are we making the content for anyway if it
Yeah.
doesn't reach
Well, it's not
anyone and
trustworthy. I mean, it
it's not
becomes,
trustworthy? Yeah, it's
right?
meaningless.
It's meaningless. And I think we are developing, and maybe this is really healthy.
Mm.
Maybe it's quite healthy because it wasn't that trustworthy anyway, whatever we wrote or saw on the internet. Whatever social media is telling us, whatever. Being critical thinkers, I think it's very healthy, and we might get to a point because everything is created by AI, then eaten by AI, and then recreated
Yeah,
by AI
yeah,
because this
yeah,
snake that's eating its
yeah,
own tail, right? So, can you trust the internet? I think, especially young people who grow up with this kind of reality.
mm,
I think they will not
mm,
trust whatever they read on the
yeah,
internet, which is really healthy.
yeah,
So maybe
Yeah.
it's a good thing that
yeah. We go in a big circle.
everybody goes viral.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Like, yeah, it's
That was
all.
yeah. And I was thinking back to the artists who are making horrible music, right? And you can classify horrible in different ways, right? Something can just not be my taste. Doesn't mean it's horrible. There can be, yeah, like how did this even become a number one song? This is literally just rhyming the same words over and over again. Um, but also when there's really truly horrible music, there's also something at stake, right? Like you yourself as that artist are putting that on the line. So I'm thinking back to this concert I went to. A friend, I was visiting a friend, and one of their friends owns an experimental art space. They said, but come down. We're having a concert. You guys can come hang out. So of course it's also like an experimental art space. So you're getting these kinds of people who are pushing the boundaries of what is what. And this this guy is an experimental flute and clarinet player. Um, and I had no idea what to expect, but this exceeded all expectations because it was a lot of squeaking for an hour and a half.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
And he was looping the squeaks and he was making new squeaks with the clarinet and then the flute. And it was so funny because I would look at my friend and we were both trying so hard not to laugh because also everyone else in the room, right? They have this cool experimental artist vibe and they're all sitting there like so serious, like, yes, this is awesome.
I love that squeak. He just put
Yeah.
in here. That's amazing squeak he just
And it
added
was,
to the
and
squeak.
even though I will not buy one of his albums,
Yeah.
I still absolutely found it
Yeah.
fascinating because A, he's putting something on the line, he's putting something out there, and he was still brave enough to try something so beyond expectation of experimental flute and clarinet music that it still blew my mind, right? And we can never have that with AI. They're never putting something on the line or losing something by trying something risky.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
even, yeah, so that also really inspired me. Like, okay, if he can get a room of 50 people together to listen to him do this, what am I missing out on by not putting myself out there?
Every
That
movement has a
is
counter movement, right?
yeah.
Every movement has people coming up. This is where, this is where, jazz was born out of that,
Mm.
Yeah,
right? It was a
exactly.
counter movement.
Yeah. So flute and clarinet guy, if you're listening, thank you for your performance.
Yes, but we're
I won't buy
never again.
We
But
won't be coming back.
yeah. Dara, last question. Well, maybe not, but last sort of topic I want to raise. So we are living in a time right now, at least, where there's a lot of anxiety and tension in the market, and also around diversity and equity, and the whole DEI thing, which I know is important to you. And to all of us, by the way, not just you, but it's very important for everyone. But how do you create that safe space in a time where people don't really feel safe?
Great
How do you
question.
how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think you've used the term a few times about brave space. Because I like that in certain situations actually where it's not just a safe space that we all can share our ideas and it's like about a business problem that we can slightly detach from, but it actually is a brave space because it requires being something personal and vulnerable to you being put on the line. And I think that when it comes to the conversation around DEI, it is that like in a lot of ways it has been made rational in terms of business outcomes and metrics and targets and things that we can say we have policies for. But ultimately, it's about people with a lived experience that is not fair or yeah, being able to access the things that that others can. And so creating the space for empathy, I think, is really important, and setting the rules of how we want to contract and engage with each other. Because one of the things that I recognize, especially because I do a lot of work around race diversity, is how loaded it is. Like people are coming with years, even before they were born, of perspectives and perceptions and feelings that they carry into a conversation like that from every demographic and angle. And so we talk about sort of three key principles for a conversation on race. It's be curious, be forgiving, and be brave. And so the being curious is recognizing that my view isn't the only view and how interested am I in what someone else is saying. And if they say something that maybe jars at first, rather than conflicting it or confronting it, sorry, actually asking a question about it.
Mm,
The being forgiven is that there's a recognition that someone might say something that you don't like, but assuming good intentions about where they're coming from. And they might use the wrong language or they might have a view you don't agree with, but assuming good intentions. And then being bold is like for you to say, like, share your truth as well, which can be hard and heavy and loaded as well. And then how is that going to be received? But I think kind of setting the ways of working that we want to have in that form of a conversation. And typically that's in a meeting or in a workshop. But I think it could be applied in bigger environments and contexts. And at the moment where a DEI, I think, is at a healthy inflection point also, just of like what is it actually achieving and is it moving the dial? And many people on both sides feeling frustrated about the agenda.
Mhm.
But can we come together to create what it needs to be going forward?
mm,
That's how I'm thinking about it. What it needs to be that feels like everyone is a winner rather than some people are winning and some are losing. And that it's a shared and collective responsibility, not of one demographic or another. And no one is to be faulted in the
mm,
conversation, but actually, can we jointly create something? That's how I'm thinking about it, but I think there's so many different ways and different narratives that are out there as well. So it's also being able to kind of strip back the noise from the conversation and just realign to the initial intent, because so much of that has been lost as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, because of course a lot of systems right now are shaking. They have
Mm.
been, but now it's reaching like fever pitch, right?
Mm.
And that's very scary and very turbulent. But I'm like you said, it's at a very healthy inflection point. And
Mm.
so for me, I'm also a bit very curious because it also creates this space and this dynamic for us to rethink and say, no,
Yeah.
this element of the system really needs to change. And
Yeah.
I really love what you said about like the 3 points: be curious, be forgiving, be brave,
Mm.
because we're only ever going to change our behavior when we find the edges of things, right?
Mm.
Little kid touches a stove one time, right? Which would be quote unquote the wrong thing. But then they learn they don't do that anymore. And right now in our culture, I really feel like we're not creating the space or the forgiveness to let people brush up against the wrong things
Yeah.
and then reflect on what that means for them.
Yeah. And I also think that it's becoming more and more polarized, and the space for people to kind of share those tense views doesn't exist enough. So it's really easy for me to sit in this like liberal bubble on social media or have an expectation of what my friends have as views, and then I'm not seeing a whole other side of the world, and that's also getting louder. So how am I making sure that I'm hearing those different perspectives, because they come from a place. I think yeah, June, July, August last year, we had significant riots in the UK, because people were so angry and frustrated about immigration. And
Yeah.
it's easy to kind of, as an ethnic minority, to suddenly feel attacked in that conversation and almost like, I don't belong here. And who are these evil people who are now attacking migrants? But at the same time, trying to understand where is their intention coming from, and what are the reasons that they're frustrated, and even if some of those elements are actually really at jar with my own values and principles, how can I make the space to hear,
Mhm.
and to see how we can collectively come together? I feel like that polarization of the world is so strong at the moment, and not moving us anywhere forward. So how does it start to kind of come back together? The social innovation point that you mentioned at the beginning, I think that is the power of collaboration and groups of diverse perspectives being together to drive societal change. So it's not just we all sit in our own little silos over here and hope that our agenda will win.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and a lot of things you're saying. I recently watched the film Flow, and
Okay.
it's won a lot of awards, but basically it's these two guys and they animated the whole entire thing on Blender. And if you don't know, Blender is a free 3D animation or 3D rendering software. Anyone can download it and use it. They animated a whole like hour and 20-minute film on Blender, and it's winning a lot of awards. But the whole thing is silent. There's no dialogue in this film because it's just a story about animals. Um, and there was one animal that I was getting really annoyed with. I'm like, oh, this animal is terrible. It's stupid. It's so mean, you know? But then there becomes a point where you learn more about this animal's background. And I could instantly
Mm.
feel that my perspective on this animal flipped. I was
Mm.
like, oh, that's interesting. I just really had feelings strongly against against a lemur, but now I feel more empathy for the lemur.
I
I
I think
understand.
that's empathy is so key. Like we have this virtual reality unconscious bias training, and unconscious bias training itself has kind of been abused, but this one is putting yourself in the shoes of a black employee on his like 24 hours at work. And I think that has sparked so many interesting conversations, because just the opportunity to sit in someone else's experience, and understand what they are going through. And it can apply in so many different ways, including animals, to build
totally.
just to
I,
build
I
that understanding.
I ran a storytelling course a week ago with a large company, and it was a group of leaders, and but they were from a sales department,
Hmm.
trying not to I don't think I can tell who it is, so I'm trying to kind of not say who it is. But one of the things that was so interesting is that because the storytelling course is about them coming up with their own stories of transition and change and et cetera to connect to people, their customers, but also or their colleagues, or and so these people knew each other because they're a team and they've known each other. But then they started sharing as part of the course, personal stories about change because they had to kind of come up with their own stories. And there was sort of one lady. She shared a story about growing up in Morocco, and she was going to get married to a Moroccan guy, and all that. But she actually then fell in love with this French dude who was not a Muslim and from Morocco. And she was like, so she canceled the wedding. She already had a dress. Anyway, she stood up as she was standing. She kind of, or also body language, she showed the dress and sort of that. We were there with her, and it was all about transition. And actually, then they all turned out really well in the end. But I said to everyone, so now after hearing that story, she became a different person, didn't she? And they were like, yeah, now, because all of a sudden this context or this story, we didn't know that, that's a whole, we never talked about those things. And so, talk about lived experience and sort of stepping in someone's shoes. I mean, it's difficult. Empathy is a difficult thing, I think, because, I worked with Syrian refugees a couple of years ago, and sort of, it's so difficult to even imagine being in their shoes. So people having to run and being on a boat and with their kids. And oh my God, I mean, I couldn't even imagine what I tried, but I knew it's also like, it's almost an insult saying, yeah, I know how you feel. Like, I know exactly how you felt, he said. No, I didn't. So there's also a moment where you go like, I have to really listen to you and work with you. I have to kind of, we have to do it together because I can't really be you. So
Yeah.
empathy, there's a limit to it in that sense of empathy as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. You're not trying to replace someone's experience or speak on behalf of someone's
Right.
experience, but just the desire, I think just the desire to want to understand. Like I like that. I'm never gonna be able to be in your shoes, or I can't even imagine what you will have gone through, like that humility, right? But then also help me understand it more. Like what else can you tell me about it? So it's I
Tell me the
definitely think
story.
it was about, yeah, tell me that story. I think that is really
Yeah,
powerful.
because
Um,
stories connect to us. Stories are because that's the best way to build empathy. Even if you read a novel, it enhances your ability to be empathetic.
yeah.
And I just want to kind of share one thing. There's a book called The Catalyst by Jonah Berger. He talks about the movable middle, and what you were talking about is what he said. You're like you have opposite views. Say there's a football field, and you're on the opposites, and that's sort of when you're totally opposite view. But you have to kind of find that movable middle, and the movable middle is usually about things that you share. And a lot of things we share because we're human beings. We want to be safe. We care for our family. There's stuff we share,
Yeah,
we need, and we all have the same kind of basic human needs.
yeah,
And so finding those shareable things and they call that the movable middle. When you
yeah,
start the conversation there, then because you can become human, you listen to each other's stories, and then
yeah.
you start opening up to different opinions, and you can kind of move people's minds.
Yeah.
So
And I think it kind of goes back to also the initial conversation we were having about being a family at work and sharing the humanness. Because your example of the story that the sales professional shared about her personal marriage, and we do an activity often in the beginning of our sessions called "My Life is a River," and it asks people to kind of tell their story using like the analogy of a river and water.
oh wow.
And before you get leaders to start to think about their business strategy and the role they're going to take and their agenda, by stripping that all away and talking to their story of who they are and where they've come from, like suddenly so many barriers come down and so much desire for, like they're suddenly already making huge amounts of connections about why people show up to work in the first place and what is important to them. And it just humanizes the whole conversation. So I think stories are super powerful. Empathy is so important. But the more you bring that into the business context and yeah, help people see each other, I think is so important.
Wow, I love that. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's really nice. What are you, when you think about the future, what are you looking forward to?
Um, I'm looking forward to continuing to learn. I think with all the disruption that's happening, there's so much, like it's almost opening my mind about the ways I might try and learn.
Mm.
Um, and growing my perspectives is something that I'm very much looking forward to. I'm also keen to get more into these conversations about the opportunities for creativity. I'm hopeful that creativity becomes even more significant in the world of business. And as much as the last 5 years have been really challenging in many ways for creatives and the market has been tough, there's so much opportunity and value that creators can bring. So I'm really positive about that and the merging of creative thinking and problem solving for business as our future.
Thank you so much for being on this podcast. Yeah,
Enjoyed it.
yeah, I have many more things to ask you.
I know.
But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. That was
Thank you
very
for having me. It was
inspirational.
a great conversation, really interesting.